brotherhood,
through friendship,
friendship.
real relationships.
Yeah.
May they last forever.
Hey now,
Again,
here's y'all. Bottoms up.
Pain hides, right? Pain often hides, right? So when we forget about our trauma and then it's triggered and it shows up and it surprises us, right? Pain hides. Part of that is naming that, right? Naming that shame, right? I got a DUI. I went to prison. I had the baby out of wedlock. Whatever that shame is, right? Giving it a name, because when we can name it, call it out, it no longer has power over us, right? And so it's very much kind of like what you're talking about, that healing. Like, oh wow, I have early onset schizophrenia. Oh wow, I have depression, whatever the it is, right? Being able to name it, because then once you name it, you can then deal with it and it takes its power away. So I love that you started with that. It just, I think it really sets the context and the tone for so much of especially the Black gay male experience.
And because you said that is in the Black gay male experience, because culturally, we don't give a lot of stuff names. You don't have the luxury of a depression or an anxiety or whatever, because if you take that to mama go, well, of course you are. You're a Black man. You know, those
And what?
having
And
a
what? Girl, like, okay, thank
exactly.
you.
But
Yeah.
having a diagnosis of that is a luxury. You know, okay, just pull yourself up, get on back out there, go to work anyway, because you got bills to pay. So you can't heal from anything that you're not willing to name.
Right.
And culturally, there's a lot of things we don't get.
Brene Brown, I had the fortunate to meet her in person probably about 3 years ago. She deals a lot with the mental health side of it, and she's a very well-known author in that arena. But another one I discovered not too recently is Mel Robbins. She goes along the same lines as Brene, but she talks about life, how life teaches you lessons, and it's like, and it will keep repeating itself until you learn the lesson. And so it just enhances. When I started listening to her, she has a podcast too. And when I started listening to her, I was like, oh wow, her and Brene could, like, I would love to see the two of them together, because they're so amazing on how they make us think about the process. So
It's funny that you say that, because she must have been, my grandmother used to say, baby, life will throw a pebble, then a rock, then a brick, then a boulder. And if you don't pay attention to the pebble, you're gonna get the rock, you're gonna get the brick, you're gonna get all of those things, because until you learn the lesson, you keep fighting the same battle. And as soon as the lesson is over, battle is over. As soon as I can say, this is why I'm going through it, this is what I learned, let it go. And so with that being said, anybody want to talk to us about what it is that you healed from, whether it be trauma or circumstance? When you're telling us what it is, how it made you feel, what was the pain? Can you describe the pain? One of the things my therapist says is, she's always asking me something. She goes, where do you feel it? How does it manifest it? And I used to think, well, that's silly, until I started to give the energy to really think about, as I'm talking about this, where am I feeling? How do I react?
look like
I've been giving a lot of thought, trying not to replicate what we talked about yesterday.
But it's okay if you do.
yeah, I think it is.
But I have and I am actively working on my trust issues, and the last year I have really focused on healing from, I'll say, betrayal and deception. And in that betrayal and deception, my my personal energy was so tightly wound up in that I couldn't even see it. And so what I've done in the last year is just really just distanced myself from everything that I would say perhaps touched that source, if you will, in order to heal and in order to clear the noise, in order to process, to be quite honest with you. And it you ask how it made me feel. I could cry right now, so I can tell that I'm still processing, but it's like an elephant stepping on your chest, and you can't breathe. And I think that the only way that I can really, it's just time. I think it's just a time thing. I think that that's what is the recipe for me, is just time. Perhaps the more that I talk about it, the less of an effect that it will have. But I think it's just a matter of time and allowing you to process however you process. I mean, I know it's probably different for everybody, you know. Some people do better with talking about it. Some people do better about writing. Some people withdraw. You know, it's different. Some people do a combination of all of those things, you know. But I've recognized the beauty out of going through and feeling the way that I did, because again, it brought the brotherhood full circle, you know. And so now we're able to talk about and compare experiences. We're able to garner better understanding from each of our own individual, you know, journeys or experiences within this, and that's a beautiful thing, you know, which leads us to where we are right now. But yeah, the deception and betrayal it's a very real and tangible thing that I just never thought I'd find myself in the midst of, in that space that I was in. You could have never, I would have never been able to, you could have never told me that and me believe it. So yeah.
Let me ask you this, because you describe a very real feeling. Did the pain that caused ever remind you or feel like other pain, other disappointments, other situations? And the reason why I ask that is a lot of time, trauma will remind us of previous trauma we haven't healed from. And so when we're reacting to it, we're reacting to all of it. So it's sometimes what people do to you becomes bigger because it's a catalyst. Rather than.
That's a good question. I will
and
say,
you may not be able to identify like the exact thing, but my question is worse. Did it feel like pain you've experienced before?
It did feel very familiar, yes.
Okay.
Yes, very familiar pain. Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, because Scott, you just bring up a good point. Chris, I relate to the trust and betrayal also. And it's, for me, I thought I had healed from it. And for pretty much I have, but I get in funks where the betrayal, the thoughts of the betrayal get in my head. And it's like, and what I've learned to do is tap into what did I learn from that? Yeah. And that helps keep me sane and moving on versus staying in that funk. Mm-hmm. But the piece that Scotty just talked about, the trauma, now that you say that, it's connected to what had just happened in my life 2 years before. So I had major trauma where I got divorced, 3 grown kids, 27 years of marriage. I'm changing my whole lifestyle, my whole outlook on life is changing. And so that's trauma. And so when you find a place to be so-called yourself, and then you find out later that there was betrayal behind that. So it makes me think, when Scotty asked that question, did I really ever deal with the trauma?
Yeah.
You know, so
It's interesting you say that, because I think a key thing in that of what I hear is you went from a place of losing everything that was comfortable and you knew, that put you in a place of vulnerability. And then you sought out a support system to help you through that. And all that did was create an opportunity to misuse your vulnerability again. And it becomes that situation where you question everything. You question friendships. Like for you, Chris, you needed to remove yourself from anything that touched it and reminded you of it, because even with everybody's best intention, you still had the doubt. If I didn't see this coming, I don't know who to trust. Another thing you said that I thought was very interesting is you said that for some, and I think commonly we all believe that time heals things. What I realize is that's also what we think about in physical healing. In physical healing, like let's say you get a cut, a really bad cut. And what happens when you get that cut is have the trauma, you experience the pain of it, and you start to bleed. But normally the body says you're only going to bleed for so long, so it clots the blood.
Right.
And so when you discover this betrayal, this so on and so forth, that's the cut.
Mhm.
The emotions that you get is the pain and the bleeding and so on and so forth. And at some point, you become numb to actually what happened. And then you enter the next phase of physical healing, which is inflammation. That's when all of the body cells sort of go to that area and try to clean up the mess the cut made. But in cleaning up that mess, what happens is when we try to clean up the mess of the betrayal, so on and so forth, that's when you want that person to explain why they did it, to tell their story, or explain to you, why did you do this, or what did I do, so on and so forth. It's all of that stuff that now your pain is not the cut, it's the wondering why. It's the cleaning up the situation. It's the why did this happen to me? What did I do? Why did you choose me? Because you're trying to make sense of it. Anytime you have to clean up a situation, you're trying to make sense of it.
Right.
And that's where we get stuck in the healing part, because we spend way too long trying to make sense of something that's not rational, that should have never happened. That in most cases, the person isn't intentional in trying to hurt you. It's just that their hurt leads on you.
Yeah.
And that's where we get stuck. So I challenge you in the sense that when we go and we say time will heal it, because that's what they think. That's what anybody who has victimized you or wronged you in any way is, I'll give them a few months. I know you need some time to process this. I know you need to heal from this. And in the on the sidelines, that's when it's Christmas time. So I call him. He's probably in a good mood. Maybe he's not so angry, and he'll talk to me. And we get stuck there, and they get stuck there, because all they know is, I don't have to clean this up now. Maybe he's done it for me, and he'll open the door. That's where we get stuck. That's where a chronic wound gets stuck. It gets infected in the inflammation area. So we cause more trauma to the area, so on and so forth. That's why people go 3, 4, 6 months, 2 years with an open wound, because it's stuck in inflammation, or something takes it back to them.
Right,
So
right.
when you, Calvin, when you go, well, I have periods where now I think through this and I'm still hurt by it. You're not hurt by what they did. You could tell that story without, you're hurt by the why, the unexplained, it doesn't make sense. You're back in that inflammation state. Where the healing starts is next phase, which is proliferation. That's the growth. That's where things grow. That's where you get the new tissue, the new blood supply, the new so on and so forth. That's when you start to make sense of the fact that you don't need to make sense of why they did it. That's where you start to look for the lesson. What did I learn from this?
Yeah.
I have to let this go. All of those things. And then the last phase in physical healing is remodeling. So once the wound is closed, it needs to scar over, it needs to strengthen, and you need to learn how to function where that wound was. And that's when you know I'm really healing, because now I don't have to forget that it happened, but I don't react to it the same.
Right, right.
It doesn't, I don't feel the same hurt. Whoever perpetrated that on me, I can sit in front of them and I don't need to know why. It doesn't mean that we're still buddies, and it doesn't mean that I have forgiven you. I have just put it into perspective that I need to move. I need to function. I need to remodel this in my life because it happened to me. And what am I going to do with it? And every time because every time you look at the scar, you have a choice. You can either go back and let it remind you of the pain, or you can prompt you to say, what did I learn?
Yeah, yeah.
That goes right along the lines of Mel Robbins, and I don't know why she keeps popping in my head, but she talks about learning. Once life teaches you the lessons, you have to stop making excuses. And once you stop making excuses, you embrace the change. And the change is, you saying like remodel, and that's the change. So now you embrace it and talk about how you think differently versus letting those thoughts fester in your head or set your day or set your mood. So embrace it and talk about how you change it. So
and think of it this way, Calvin, in your remodeling, you were closer to the betrayers than probably you were to any of us.
Yeah.
But now you've allowed yourself to remodel it in a way to say, you know what? I seek brotherhood. I need brotherhood.
Right.
I welcome brotherhood. And I'm not going to let the ones who ruined it for me at the beginning stop me from having what I know that I crave and need.
Right. Yes.
I think as I'm listening to you guys talk, one of the issues that I have is old trauma that was never resolved, that through life I learned how to bury it. I learned how to just stuff it down, and men don't cry, men don't this, men don't that. And you stuff it down so much that it becomes something else. It becomes anger. It becomes, why is he so mad all the time? It becomes that. And you don't understand, wait, why am I so mad? This doesn't make sense. You don't tie it to, I'm mad at it was this situation that triggered me that made me so mad. But before you know it, you're red. You're seeing red and you're ready to tear some shit down. It's like when you guys were talking about betrayal, I actually went back to my childhood, and I had this experience that it only resurfaces every now and then. Like I think about it every now and then, but the root of it and the feeling, all of that stayed. And it was betrayal. I felt it was betrayal. When I look back at it as an adult, I'm seeing these are kids. These are kids. Kids don't know any better, blah, blah, blah. As an adult, I'm seeing this. As a kid, I'm feeling I was betrayed by someone that I thought was my best friend. And from then, it's like we were talking yesterday. From then, it's like really, I stopped trusting people, and I stopped trusting everyone, because I'm like, if this person was my best friend, and this person would do this to me, wait a minute. I began to analyze every single relationship around me. I began to look at my family differently. I began to look at everything. And then I think the unfortunate thing for me happened where I learned how to suppress it. I'd read books on how to suppress it. Unbeknownst to me that they were books on suppression, they were books talking about sci-fi books, talking about different characters. And this is how this character hid their emotion, you know, almost like spy shit, stuff like that. But I embraced and ingested all of that stuff where people that would meet have to say, like, what the fuck? You don't even react to stuff. What the hell is going on? Like, you're a robot. And I'm like,
They
and
call
then
you
I'm
a Scorpio.
offended.
and those things.
I would be offended by them saying that. But then I'd say, but wait, no, I learned that was practice. Like it took me years to learn that. But then I'm still offended by them saying that, saying, you know, how dare you say I'm a robot? How dare you say I don't have any emotions? You know, I mean, I had so many people say, you know, I mean, my ex would say, oh, you're so aloof. Chrissy said that too. But I had my ex say, oh, you're so aloof. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about aloof? But why the X comes up is I began to see certain things that took me back to my childhood, that took me back to the betrayal, that took me back to all of that, to say, wait a minute, I let you in. And the moment I saw anything, I'd say, oops, stop. Instead of maybe having a conversation, hey, I don't like you when you do this. Hey, you know, and begin to, you know, kind of talk that out, I would just shut down. Because again, I'm remembering betrayal, and I'm like, nope, I'm not letting this happen again. No, sir. And I would just shut it down and kind of like withdraw and run almost emotionally. No, not almost. I would run emotionally, but I'm there present, and it's like not the optimal, the optimal me that's present at this point. Because the child now is, I'm protecting the child. So the child, I'm putting all kind of everything around the child to protect the child from everything. And now the man is standing up ready to fight. Like, wait, what the fuck is going on? What's happening right now?
Number
So,
one is. Oh, go ahead.
yes. No, I
say-
was going to say, how do you, I guess, go back and open that up so that you can say, hey, okay, it's almost like the surgeon leaving something in you. At some point, they got to cut you back open and take that thing out. How do you go back in and open up that area to remove that festering or whatever it is, to take it out so that the healing can occur? Because I find that maybe it's diminished in these numerous years that have occurred since this time, but it's still present.
And one of the things I hear in your action is,
Well,
who has
can you say, you said, sorry, that very last statement, you said you feel like sometimes it's diminished?
I said, I feel that it has diminished. However, it's still there. So
I would
it's
say
still,
quite the opposite. I mean,
huh?
I said I would say quite the opposite, right? Because as we stuff, as we suppress, as we forget, and I use that in air quotes,
Gotcha.
right?
Gotcha.
It grows, and so that
Gotcha.
it doesn't diminish, because when I look at you wrong, or what you perceive as wrong, you don't know. I could just be choking on my coffee, but I've looked at you wrong, and it is.
I'm like, what you mean? What you mean? Yes.
Can you give me the
And
high?
maybe,
Over here
you're right.
upset, and I'm
You're
choking.
right.
Right?
You're right. You're
So-
right.
what
And
has
it may
diminished
not be
is
so
your
much that it's
connection.
diminished.
Or
It may
your-
not
What is
be so much
diminished
that-
as your connection to the original. Your
Mhm.
reaction hasn't. Is
Right.
And
your
I think I
connection-
I would even challenge the
diverted.
connection. I would even challenge the connection. I think what
I don't think it's diminished. I agree. I agree.
acknowledgement of what has happened, or the
I agree.
understanding
I
of
agree.
what has happened. But
Yeah, I don't think it's diminished. Now that you say that, I don't think it's diminished. I agree with you. I think I've just over time learned to spread it out
or
so
I
that
mean,
it doesn't come all out at one thing. I've just taken this big ball of mess and I've just spread it over many things as opposed to dealing with the big ball of mess. I just said, oh, let me spread this out. So that way I'm more so reactive to more things than as opposed to one little trigger. I'm reactive to, oh no, I'm reactive to more shit. So I think that's my problem. So I think I'm trying to unlearn a lot of that stuff. And it is something, because I mean, again, that was years and years and years of practice at not, and in my head, I wasn't even thinking of, I'm suppressing this, I'm pushing this down. I wasn't even thinking that. What I was thinking was, I'm protecting myself. So I need to not show this. I need to not show that. And then it ties into, for me, it ties into the whole gay thing. In my family, in my city, you could not be, you couldn't be. I mean, if you were gay, it was okay to be gay, but you better be in the closet, very deep in the closet, but you couldn't be effeminate, you couldn't be nothing. And what you mean you don't like sports? What you mean you don't like girls? It was so much. So that all of that just kind of tied together, where that now I'm suppressing and I'm burying here, but I'm also suppressing and I'm burying here, and then I'm suppressing and I'm burying here. So that just became this big ball of me just suppressing and burying everything, where it's like, and I would say, man, I feel like I'm acting all the time, which was very weird before I even thought, oh, let me go be an actor. Before I even thought that stuff, it's like I was acting all the time. And then when I went to be an actor, I said, this is crazy. Who would do this to themselves? And I'm like, but you've been doing it to yourself your whole life. What do you mean? So it's trying to unpack all of that stuff. And I know I have to start a trunk at a time, but I think over these years, I've created so many trunks and I've unpacked stuff and put it in other trunks. And it's so many trunks now that are around me that I'm trying to unpack, that I know I need to unpack, because it's not getting better. It's not getting easier. It may not be getting maybe worse, because maybe I'm numb to it. Who knows if it's getting worse or not?
I mean,
it came normal for you.
Alone, though. I
It came
think that,
normal.
like we're here. You don't have to do it alone. And I think that is why I so loved yesterday and so loved Chris's no, right? I mean, I think that no was so powerful. And I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but that no, I think, solidified this space as a safe space, as a brave space, right? So that you can come in your all, and so that you don't have to unpack your boxes alone. Mine are up in my closet with a little pretty pink bow, honey. I've been tugging at those bows, because to your point, like, you got to unpack them. No matter how pretty you've put them up, like, they will show their ugly heads. I think that's so powerful. Like Julian, you don't have to unpack them alone. Like, you have to deal with the contents of them, right? But you don't have to unpack them alone. And I think that so often folks, especially our gay Black males, find themselves in the middle of their closet unpacking by themselves, and then also reliving and dealing with the contents of it by themselves. And that is a scary and very lonely place to be, especially when you don't have the tools to recognize what it is, or the understanding of how that is making you show up, right? Like, so I just want to offer, you do not have to unpack anything by yourself.